Welcome to today's program. First, you will see a few scenes by the director and actors of Hitler's Tasters, followed by a short conversation between playwright Michelle Kholos Brooks and Holocaust historian Gavriel D. Rosenfeld. You will then see another few scenes, and the conversation will continue. Towards the conclusion of today's program, we will open the floor for questions with both Michelle and Gavriel, along with the actors and director Sarah Norris. Please type your questions into the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. It is now my honor to introduce Michelle and Gavriel. Gavriel D. Rosenfeld is professor of history and director of the undergraduate program in Judaic Studies at Fairfield University. He is the author or editor of 7 books, including most recently, The Fourth Reich, The Specter of Nazism from World War II to the Present, and the forthcoming co-edited volume, Fascism in America, Past and Present. He has published many essays in newspapers and journals like The Washington Post, The Atlantic, The Forward, and the Jewish Review of Books. He is an editor of the Journal of Holocaust Research and edits the blog, The Counterfactual History Review. Michelle Kholos Brooks is an award-winning playwright. Her works include Kalamazoo, which received the Riva Shiner Comedy Award, Hostage, a finalist for the Woodward-Newman Drama Award, the Friday Newman Political Play Contest, and a showcase finalist for the National New Play Network, and Chair, which received second place in the Firehouse Theater Festival of New American Plays. Michelle's latest play, Hitler's Tasters, based on true events in history, has been produced in New York, Chicago, and New Jersey, and won the Susan Glaspell Award. The show enjoyed a sold-out run at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2019 and was named Best of Fringe by Stage Magazine. The filmed stage version of Hitler's Tasters was listed as a must-watch by the LA Times and selected for the annual Kilroy's list. Hitler's Tasters opened in Los Angeles with today's cast in March 2020 and had to close the day after it opened due to COVID. Michelle's plays have been produced across the country and internationally. Publications include Dramatist Play Service, Room Literary Magazine, and The Daily Beast. She is a member of the Dramatists Guild of America, the Playwrights Center, and Pacific Resident Theater. In addition, she is a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. And now, Hitler's Tasters.
At Rise, 3 young women dance onto the stage to contemporary music. They are in a gray-looking room with nothing but a table and 3 chairs. The girls are dressed in clothing from the 1940s, yet they giggle and take selfies and group photos with their cell phones.
What do you think of this lipstick? Let's see. Give a sexy pout.
Oh, it's hot.
You say everything is hot.
Well, not everything.
Usually go a little pinker, but Mucci says this one makes me look more sophisticated. A little much for daytime, no?
Well, when else am I supposed to wear it? I'm going to save it for a nightclub. I'm going to save it for a concert or an evening stroll through the center of town. I'll never get to wear it if I wait for an evening. Besides, I could meet someone here.
Here? Well, who could you meet here?
One of them?
Oh, don't be silly. One of them? It's the same ones every day, every time.
You never know. Maybe one of them will be replaced with someone handsome.
Some of them are already handsome.
Oh, don't be dumb. You'd best keep your eyes down. Smile, but not too much. Eyes down like this, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
How about this?
Oh.
Oh, all of us. All of us.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, I look like a pig in that one. Try again.
Oh, there, you look hot.
You think?
Yes. Oh, like that American. What's her name?
Are you crazy?
Well, I'm just.
Don't be stupid, Anna.
I'm sorry.
Okay, just don't get us into trouble.
No, but really, I
Is this
thought-
going to be one of your ridiculous, epic apologies?
Well, I'm so sorry.
God, you're annoying.
Hilda, don't be mean. Anna, she's upset. Hey, don't listen. Anyway, you're the glamorous one. You look just like Marlena.
No,
It's true.
me, for real.
Give me a break. Here, let's see for ourselves.
Oh, okay, everyone pose for the paparazzi. Oh, see how pretty you are, Anna?
Really?
Really?
No.
Really? You could be a movie star or a model.
You're too kind.
You know, Anna, I hadn't noticed it before, but from this angle, you almost look like you could be a Jew.
Anna begins to hyperventilate.
Hilda,
What?
don't.
I'm just
Are you
saying.
trying to?
Stop breathing.
Hilda!
Like that. Stop breathing like that. She's breathing too hard. I hate it.
I hate you.
Anna grabs Hilda's phone and throws it across the room.
Bitch! Oh, it's not broken, you lucky bitch. You would have owed me a new one.
For what you just
Okay, everyone calm down. Do you want to get in trouble?
Give me your phone. Give it, or I'll tell them about the souvenir you almost took home last week.
But I didn't take it.
Well, you thought about it.
Bitch. You play innocent, but you're a bitch.
You started it, Hilda. Give it to her.
Anna holds out her phone. Anna holds out her hand. It's shaking. Hilda reluctantly gives her the phone. Anna has trouble scrolling through. Liesel takes it and continues until she finds the correct photo.
There it is.
Liesel taps the phone.
Deleted.
You can't just go. Fine, okay. No one around here can take a joke.
It's hardly a joke, Hilda.
Okay, sorry. Jeez.
You know what did I ever do to you?
Okay, come on, girls. We're friends. And even if we weren't, we're stuck together. We might as well get along. We need each other. How many of our friends are even alive anymore?
Okay, she's right. I'm sorry, Anna. And you do look like Marlena. I was just feeling jealous.
You jealous of me? But you are so pretty, you have nothing to be jealous of.
Really?
Oh, God, look at you with your beautiful blonde hair and your perfect nose. I mean, who wouldn't be jealous of a nose like that? You look like you belong on a poster for the League of German Girls. Perfect!
What about me?
You, don't get me started. Your beauty is blinding.
I've got to wear shades just looking at you.
Extra UV protection.
Let's face it, we're all gorgeous.
Oh, totally.
You got that right, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Suddenly, we hear the terrifying sound of jackboots clicking on a concrete floor. A guard is coming. The girls stop giggling, stand up straight, and hold out their arms to receive their next meal. The lighting indicates that a door opens. The girls' fear is palpable. Lights out. Lights up on the same set. The girls are quiet and anxious. There are trays in front of them, and the food on those trays has been eaten. After a moment, we hear church bells in the distance.
It's nice that they still ring the bells.
But it's not Sunday.
They ring for all kinds of reasons now. Vater wrote a list before he left. Different rings for different messages.
Well, why don't they tell everyone this? You're so lucky your father's an officer. You get all the information. What did those mean?
I don't remember.
Well, what else has he told you?
Don't be childish. My father's a very important man. He can't just tell me every little top secret. Sometimes we don't hear anything from him for days, weeks. He's very busy.
Has it been an hour yet?
9.
Remember how quickly an hour used to go when you were at a dance? Or a cafe with friends? An hour goes so slowly here.
What if they're not telling us the truth? What if an hour isn't enough? What if it could happen after 2 hours or 3? What if it could happen when we're back at home sleeping in our beds? What if they just say an hour so that we don't go crazy waiting all day?
God, Anna, why do you have to say things like that? They would never lie to us. Just think about it for a moment. What if the Führer had to wait all day to eat? He'd be too hungry to command the troops. He'd be too hungry to make speeches. Believe me, if they say an hour, they mean an hour. Our people understand poison.
But, what if it's a new kind of poison? Something our enemies have discovered.
Are you suggesting that the Russians, or please, the Poles, could actually concoct something our people couldn't? Those losers?
Wait, so we're not friends with the Russians?
I shouldn't have to school you on the Russians, Anna.
I get confused. There's so much to keep up with. I can't figure out who's our friends or who we hate.
All you have to know is that we are the best.
Of course. That I know.
Everyone knows.
Oh, soon the world will know.
Oh, they know. Vater says they just don't want to admit it. How many more minutes?
8, I think. Well, sometimes I panic and hit the stopwatch too soon, but it should be about 8. If one of us was going to die, it probably would have happened by now. I don't think anything's going to happen in the last 8 minutes.
You're right. I'm sure you're right.
Of course.
Hilda? Does your father know that you've been chosen for this job?
This honor, you mean? Of course he knows. Muti sent him a telegram as soon as the Hauptmann chose me. He's very proud. Wrote me that it's glorious to die protecting the Führer.
Wait, so we're going to die?
No. I don't know.
But we could. Your father thinks we could really die.
That's not the point.
Well, but then what is the point? What else could possibly be the point?
Okay, can you help me out here?
Please. I'm sure we won't. But if we did,
I'm going to die.
Do you even know what helping is?
Anna, calm down. I'm just trying to tell you that that's the way that Hilda's father talks. Because he's a patriot.
And a decorated officer.
Yes.
And very busy.
Yes. That's the way important, patriotic, busy people talk. He just meant that we're special.
Mm-hmm.
To be chosen for this
honor.
Yes. Honor.
Yes. And Muti says we'll be fine. She cried when I was chosen, but she's also very proud. What could be more noble than serving one's country? The Führer said he wanted girls of good German stock. And out of all the girls that are left, he chose us. Think about it. We could all get pretty medals.
Families could get the medals.
Not helping.
My moocher would probably prefer a medal to me anyway.
Well, that's silly.
Yes, silly.
And look how nicely they treat us. Just look at the plates. We are being served on the Fuhrer's personal bone china, the finest in the world. Delicate, lovely bone. Do you know how easily bone can break? It's a compliment that he trusts us. And the sterling silver, the golden cups. It's so elegant. We are privileged to eat off such elegance.
A girl from my school used to have golden cups like this. I ate at our house all the time. I mean, her family was very rich. The father, he ran a bank, I think. I used to love going to their house. You know, they had such beautiful things, gleaming candlesticks and golden cups. Oh, and they were very kind to me. Her mother gave me these pretty clips for my hair, and the girl would offer me sweets, and we would just dance to the phonograph in her room. She was a good friend.
You're not friends anymore?
Yeah, she's gone now. The whole family. Oh, you won't tell, will you? That I was friends with a girl whose family used golden cups. I mean, it was before I knew. They were so nice. I didn't realize that they were enemies.
We won't tell, Anna. You couldn't have known. How much more time?
Oh, 3 minutes.
I would have known. I always know about those people.
We wouldn't die in the last 3 minutes, would we?
No, I'm sure of it.
I would have known when I saw those cups.
Well, they sure are pretty cups.
It's an honor.
It's an honor.
An honor.
Silence. They are stiff as boards. After a moment, we hear the sound of their cell phone alarms going off at the same time. They relax visibly. After a moment, they look at each other and start giggling. We hear music as the girls begin to dance.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that wonderful introduction. Thanks to all the actors for that great performance. We have so many things to talk about. I'm Gavriel Rosenfeld. I was introduced just briefly at the outset, of course, and Michelle and I have already had a lot of opportunity to discuss some of the things that I think her play raises. And just to give a little bit of perhaps an overview of what I'm hoping we can cover in our two discussion blocks. One, I thought we would talk about the origins of the play, Michelle, and a little bit about its present day relevance in a context in the United States circa 2021, where we see increasing right-wing extremism. And then I thought for our second block of time, we wouldn't so much talk about present day political significance, but maybe historical significance with regard to what the play might reveal about German history, the history of the Nazi period, the history of the Holocaust, maybe how Jewish audiences may take away meaning from the play. So, maybe that can be the way that we orient ourselves towards the first block and then the second block. It's interesting, having just seen, having read the script, of course, carefully, but having not seen a performance, I thought one of the things that might be worth doing, Michelle, as we begin, is for me to ask you if there's any exposition or other details you might want to offer our audience members who have obviously just seen 15 minutes of the play, but haven't seen the entire thing from start to finish, and might be wondering about certain things that might be going on that in a normal viewing would be divulged over time, but maybe in a 15-minute block aren't yet clear. Is there anything off the top of your head that you think you might want to add that would resolve some questions that audience members might be having at this moment?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. This reading just started at the very top of the play, but we are, everything is kind of being revealed as it happens. There's nothing that we're missing, except that it occurs to me when you're, doing a play on Zoom and you can't see the actors moving around stage and you don't have the same kind of the time and the music introduction, that you don't have as much time to process you've got less time to sort of process what's happening. And of course, whenever the play starts, I've had people that has said to me, oh my gosh, I thought I was in the wrong play at first because the girls came out dancing to this contemporary music, and then they had cell phones and they were taking selfies. And so I thought maybe I was in the wrong play. And yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Gav, because I think in this context, it might be harder to internalize that and follow in real time.
Sure, and of course, for any reader of a novel or any viewer of a film or an audience member to play, I mean, there's the difference between what knowledge you bring about the work in question in advance, and if you're just starting off from ground zero, then you're going to learn all kinds of things afresh, and it may just be a completely different experience. But that being said, I think certainly after the second act and after we have our discussion, a lot of the things that may still be unclear to people or they may be wondering about will be divulged, which of course is the essence of drama, I suppose. But maybe we can get back into the first obvious question that I think many people always want to ask writers, playwrights, novelists, and so forth, is what inspired you to write this play, and what would be perhaps significant to tell us about the timing of when you came up with the idea, how you developed it further, and then we'll talk a little bit perhaps about the allegorical significance.
Sure. So I was at a war museum in 2014 in Indianapolis, your hometown. And I was with my old writing partner. We had a play that had opened in Bloomington, and we were killing time before our flight. And as we were walking around the museum, my former writing partner said to me, hey, did you hear that story about the young German women who were Adolf Hitler's food tasters? And then he walked away. Like, he walked as if like he hadn't just said something that completely changed my life, right? He just walked away, and I was like, wait a minute, halt, turn around, say that again. And he said, young German women who were Adolf Hitler's food tasters. And I said right away, I said to him, are you going to write that? Because if you're not going to write that, I'm going to write that. And he said, no, I'm writing other things. And I said, okay, because I'm going to write that. And I checked with him like twice after. Sometimes as a writer, you get these amazing gifts from the universe. It's very oogie spooky. But as soon as I heard about this story, the play landed on me, and because it hit so many buttons of concern for me. I mean, young women stuck in a room together with nothing to do but eat, which is always complicated for young women, and waiting to die to see if their food is poisoned. And what do they do with their time? I mean, first of all, isn't adolescence hard enough, right? I mean, first you've got that, right? And then you're against the backdrop of war, and then you could die at every meal. And so it just kind of hit all these buttons of concern for me. And I didn't start writing the play for almost a couple of years. I was thinking about it, and I was working on other projects. And then I got serious about it at the end of 2015. And it just so happened that some of the rhetoric in the world at the time felt a little too familiar in the context of this play, and I found it terrifying. And it also occurred to me that I really didn't want these girls to be sepia-toned people in history. I wanted them to feel very, very, very present. I wanted them to feel like the girls that we know and love in our lives who could be at risk of, you know, if there were a dictator in our midst. And that's sort of where the cell phones and the anachronisms, and I wanted to time bend a little bit to feel that urgency about our young women today.
Yeah. And so I was going to follow up with that, I think. I mean, especially after seeing this 15-minute block of the play, I, as a viewer, and I imagine many viewers who are, you know, joining us on Zoom, maybe kind of ping-ponging back and forth between two reactions towards the characters. One, on the one hand, you feel a certain degree of empathy for them because they're stuck in this pretty boring situation. They're trying to entertain themselves with phones in this case, anachronistically, but, you know, back in the 1940s, they would have been doing whatever, playing jacks or something. You know, maybe that's a little bit age inappropriate, but the fact of the matter is that they really don't have much to do but do something however often a day that is absolutely terrifying. So on the one hand, we empathize with them because they're in a, you know, an unenviable position. On the other hand, we view them, I would imagine, from a liberal democratic perspective with tremendous hostility because they're born and bred Nazis who at least are viewing their task as something that's honorable. And, you know, we could get into the other details or lines in the play that flesh this out. But when you were writing it, how conscious were you of trying to be ambiguous about whether the audience should be viewing the characters empathetically or with some degree of hostility?
You know, that's a really good question. I think I think whenever I write a play, I always go in having compassion for the characters because I don't think you can write them from a place of hostility, you know. Otherwise, they become they don't have enough dimension. And I'm more interested in sort of raising questions and trying to understand than I am in trying to indict. I mean, obviously I have strong opinions about certain things, but I felt like I started from a place of them just being girls who had been, who were in a difficult situation, who had been tasked with a mission and who probably didn't have a choice. Had been probably, you know, if this is like around somewhere in 1944, I think that they've kind of been raised with Hitler as a paternalistic figure. So they don't know much else. They're getting food, which is probably real scarce right about now. So I think I had compassion for them, and I think for the audience, whatever they want to feel is, you know, is fair.
Mm-hmm. And I actually wanted to ask about the gender dimension too, because one can imagine, yeah, obviously I'm not a playwright, and when I'm doing my writing, it's always based in fact. As a historian, that's what we were kind of stuck with. But did you ever entertain the possibility of changing the gender of the characters? For example, Hitler, of course, was well known for having frequented Hitler Youth rallies and being avuncular towards the young, you know, German males. And if you had this play, you know, featuring a team of, you know, young German boys, the dynamics would have been different in some ways, but perhaps similar in others. So I guess what I'm wondering about is what role does the fact that these tasters are women, and especially young adolescent girls, I mean, you could tell us what age you think or you imagine they actually are, perhaps just for the audience's information, but how might that gender issue impact our view of empathy or lack thereof towards them, might you think?
That's a good question. I mean, I imagine them in their like late teens, early 20s. You know, I mean, partly I had heard, the reporting that I had read was that these were specifically young German women. I assume that as many men were available as possible were fighting, although there was probably women fighting as well at this point. But it resonated with me so much because of the way that, the way that we have historically and continue to treat young women as expendable. And so that's where my concern was sparked from. And so that was how it played out. And, you know, I was a young woman once, so I could put myself in this situation, albeit, you know, I'm Jewish, so it would have been a much different outcome for me. But I think for me, I really wanted to explore them as young women, and the dynamics would have been different for boys, but this felt to me like a woman's story.
Yeah, and in fact, historically, and I think we'll talk a lot more about the history in the second block of our conversation, but historically, of course, the Nazis' primary agenda for German women was to place them in the domestic sphere and to keep them in the domestic sphere. So it was Kinderküche, Kirche, you know, church, children, and cooking, and in the kitchen, and, you know, the equivalent of the, you know, awful phrase, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. So I guess if the women who are here and are serving the fatherland by being involved in kitchen-like culinary duties, then that's appropriate. And I think, you know, they were stuck. I think, you know, we might want to spend a little bit of time after the second act talking about some of the historical themes that are visible in both acts of the play that we're going to be seeing. But I wanted to come back to the question of the allegorical significance of this play from a perspective of the Trump era and people in the American media debating about America's right-wing turn and the threat to democracy and whether we're in fact on a fascist precipice or something like that. I mean, for any reader who would read the script or any viewer who would see the play, it seems to me that there are all kinds of ways of drawing connections between what the actors are themselves discussing, how they're responding to their situation. And two of the themes I thought maybe you might want to comment on, whether or not you know, sort of infused your play with these themes deliberately or not, but how might you perhaps describe how your play addresses, perhaps on the one hand, that the theme of misguided patriotism, a theme that I think many of us can understand, especially in light of the January 6th sacking of the Capitol. So misguided patriotism on the one hand, and maybe another related concept, we'll call it misplaced trust in authority, because these girls are very trusting. They at least seem to be very performatively showing their love of their country. And there are other themes that we could perhaps tease out also that have present day relevance. But what would you say just about those two themes and what your play might say about them from a present day perspective?
You know, what occurred to me as I was writing this play and getting to know this play a little bit especially through working with these phenomenal actors and director, is that, you know, you can align with the tyrant all you want, right? You can be the whitest, most privileged, the future of the Reich. You can think that you're superior because you're aligning yourself with the head of state. But the truth is, once the tyrant is done dividing, creating an other, once there's no more other, once you've gotten rid of the other, then, I mean, as a historian, I think you can talk about this more than I can, but typically I believe that the tyrant then turns on his own. And so it was, in terms of misguided and misplaced trust, you know, they weren't safe, and they should have been the safest, but still they were the ones that were chosen to be poisoned. So that's a very big piece of this for me. And I think, you know, no matter what your politics are, as we've been sort of watching things unfold in the last few years, you know, there were often people who were favored that quickly became unfavored, right? And I'm not saying that we've been in a tyrannical situation, and, you know, Hitler is a much different thing than most things, but But aligning with the head guy doesn't necessarily serve everyone well. It certainly hasn't historically, and it continues not to.
Yeah, and I think as we sort of close this segment, because I think we're close to our time limit of 15 minutes for our first discussion, I'd just like to reiterate the important point you made about expendability. You know, in a totalitarian system, in a non-democratic system, the revolution usually ends up eating its own children, as the French, you know, thinker Malay Dupin once upon a time said in the 1790s. And, you know, if there's no possibility for the system to course correct because you've stifled dissent and you've stifled opposition, even the most loyal followers become expendable. I mean, Michelle Pence is not a character among your tasters, but, you know, if she were, you can, you know, see that from a present day analogous American perspective. You know, that would be, you know, sort of exhibit A. So with that having been provocatively perhaps thrown into the discussion, which we're going to now eliminate and move on to the second act, Suzanne, can you either, am I turning it over to Suzanne or back to the actors, I think, for the second act?
I think we're back to the actors, and I just want to say what's happening here. So we're cutting into the middle of the play now, what is essentially the second act. And one thing that it's important for the viewers to know is that Anna, who had talked about the friend with the golden cups, she has disappeared. And when we come to the play at this point, Hilda and Liesel are trying to figure out are spinning on what's happened to her. And they start actually accusing each other of maybe having reported on Anna. So at this point in the play, the girls are actually in a big fist fight. And then things change. So we'll go from there.
Suddenly, the door swings open and a new girl wearing a red coat is forcefully shoved inside. She crashes onto the floor.
Ow! Ow!
Are you okay?
Yes, I just, ow.
Liesel helps her up.
Here. Sit down.
Danke. Perhaps someone can tell me about my job.
Your job?
I was told to report here. My grammar is quite good and I can type very quickly, 70 words per minute.
What's your name, Weebling?
Oh, forgive me. My name is Margot.
Margot.
Yes.
Do you see a fucking typewriter in here, Margot?
I am not here to type.
No, girlfriend. You are not here to type.
I see.
Well, I'm Liesel. This is Hilda.
Well,
They didn't tell you why you're here?
I'm to serve the Reich. That's all that matters. I just assumed it was typing since I was the best in my class. I thought the word had gotten out. When they knocked on my door,
Those knocks.
yes, the knocks. And Mutter suddenly told me I have a job serving the Reich. She seemed nervous.
But you weren't?
Nervous about making a good impression, but like I said.
Yes, you're a really fast typist.
So how long have the two of you been here?
I don't know. Days?
Weeks.
Months? Hildy, is that right?
Something like that.
Uh-huh, good. So you can show me what I need to know.
That's a pretty coat, Margot.
Oh, isn't it? Thank you. Lottie found it in the wooded area behind our house.
A tree had fallen, and he went to cut it up for firewood, and the coat was just lying there, and Vati thought I'd like it. It's curious for such a pretty red coat to be abandoned in the woods, don't you think? I mean, what kind of a person forgets a coat in the winter? But why should I worry about some careless dope, Muti cleaned it up and pulled off some patches. It's mine now, yes?
It would seem that way.
Would either of you like to try it on?
May we?
Yes! If we're going to work together, we'll become great friends. Here.
Margot hands the coat to Liesel, who tries it on. She twirls around.
Take a video of me. I always wanted a red coat, but Muti said it wasn't practical.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Ooh. Yes. Ooh, twirl again. Yes. Oh, scheisse. The video camera isn't working. It was fine earlier. Maybe something got dislodged when I was pushed. Why did they push?
Maybe someone tripped and pushed you by mistake.
Yes, it was an accident.
Oh, yes, of course, it was an accident. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. Why would a soldier push me? It's not like I'm a dirty gypsy.
I should say not. Can I try the coat?
Of course.
Just one more minute. Oh, hurry up, Liesel. It's going to be lunchtime before we know it.
Oh, that's lovely. They serve us lunch?
They serve us 3 meals a day.
Oh, I can't believe my luck. 3 meals? I've never heard of such a job. Oh, Mutter and Vater will be so pleased. They can save quite a bit of money with one less mouth to feed.
They could end up saving more than you could imagine.
Hilda.
Whatever does she mean? What do you mean? I don't understand.
I can't believe they didn't tell you.
Tell me what? For goodness sake, why won't anyone tell me what I will be doing to serve the motherland?
Well, I can't do it. You'll enjoy it so much more than I will. Be my guest.
I'll tell you everything you need to know, Margot. But first, let me try on the coat.
Liesel takes off the coat and reluctantly hands it to Hilda. Hilda puts it on with delight and twirls round and round the room. Suddenly, we hear the sound of jackboots again. The girls get in formation. The lighting indicates that a door opens. Hilda and Liesel hold out their hands to receive their food. Margot scrambles to imitate them. Lights out. Lights up. The 3 girls sit with their trays full of food in front of them. They are all crying. After a while, they are reduced to sniffles, and finally, they resign themselves to their fate.
Where's the beef?
Come again?
The meat, the fish, the chicken? Surely the Führer gets the choice cuts, the best quality steaks. I mean, I know meat is scarce, but for the Führer.
Oh my God. She doesn't know.
Well, you're joking, right?
Joking? Why would I joke? This might be my last meal, and I didn't even say a proper goodbye to my parents, and you think I'm making a joke? What is so funny about meat?
Margot, darling, the Führer is a vegetarian.
What?
Look on the bright side. I've lost 2.5 kilos since I started here. I'm not sure if it's the food or the worry, but either way, I look good.
You were telling me that I could quite possibly go to my death eating fucking rabbit food?
Sorry.
Well, if it's any consolation, you get used to it.
Unbelievable. I want to serve my homeland, and this is what I get?
You forget yourself, Margot.
Pardon me?
It's not all about you, you know. We're here too. We've been here. It's not just you who might die, it's all of us. And outside of this room, our men, our boys are dying every day, every minute. They're losing limbs, losing lives, losing their minds on the battlefield. Every one of us has to sacrifice, you twit. And, let me tell you, you are one lucky bitch if the worst thing you have to endure is Brussels sprouts.
Oh no, I hate Brussels sprouts.
So do I. That's beside the point.
Okay, give her a break, Hildy. She has to get used to it. We did too.
Well, we weren't such whiny.
Do you want to wear my coat again after lunch?
Oh, yes.
So how do we start?
We just, dig right in.
And then we wait?
Yes. We wait.
What do you do while you wait?
We talk about movies and boys and how magnificent it will be when the Fuhrer rules the world. Oh, and we take selfies.
Oh, not me. I'm sick of selfies.
We just wait.
And we pray.
Lights down. In the dark, we hear contemporary music. Lights up on the girls dancing.
Yeah, we'll be drinking and nobody's gonna stop us. And we'll be kissing anybody that's around us. I just wanna have fun tonight. Oh, let me blow up this house tonight.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks again to the actors for scene or the second act, at least a portion of it. I'd like to begin our second round of conversation by making a reference to the image that's behind me as my screen background. This is a ruin, or this is part of the ruin of Hitler's famous Wolfslair headquarters in Rostenburg, Poland. Rostenburg, East Prussia, once upon a time, now Poland, Katsrin. And what, of course, the reason I put this up as my screen background is that Hitler, during the latter part of World War II, certainly after 1942-43, spent an increasing amount of time close to the Eastern Front in this command headquarters. And according to the woman, Margot Volk, whose memoirs, Michelle, I think it's safe to say, were one of the reasons you got interested in this very question. This was the area where the women in question were involved doing their food tasting. So that explains the screen background here. It's a major tourist attraction, in fact, for people who want to travel in Eastern Europe and see some of the sites from the Second World War. But the reason I bring this all up right now is because it brings up, I think, the question of Hitler, and more importantly, Michelle, brings up the question of the title of your play. Because as someone who's written quite a bit about Hitler as a popular cultural phenomenon, there's no question that in some ways he's ubiquitous in our present day cultural world in the form of films and novels and, of course, internet memes. And the thing I find striking about your play is that on the one hand, it's an eye-popping title, Hitler's Tasters. I mean, what on earth does this mean? It inherently entices our imagination, asks us, you know, to wonder what's going on here. And yet the crucial point is that Hitler never appears in the play. I hope that's not a spoiler. But so how was that a conscious decision? And what's going on with a play called Hitler's Tasters that doesn't feature Hitler?
I never had any interest or thought about putting Hitler on stage. I was interested in the girls and their reaction to their world. I mean, we've seen a lot of Hitler. We all know what we're talking about. He's gotten a lot of attention. You know, I even went back and forth about using Hitler in the title. But I was given some, I think, very good advice, which was, you tell people what it is. You have to tell people what the play is. And I think that it's been great for the play in some ways. It certainly, as you said, it gets people's attention. Some people have not had a great reaction to it and were upset by it. And as a matter of fact, we even had in Los Angeles, there was even a reviewer who refused to review it because Hitler was in the title, which I think is too bad because it's not a play about Hitler. And he was a real person. And I don't believe in sort of whitewashing over this stuff. So, yeah, but I never wanted to, I was only interested in these girls and their reaction to the world around them. I don't think we get these stories through the eyes of children that much, and certainly not through the eyes of young women.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for whenever, you know, you and the team can put this on live in person once again. I do think it's interesting how he's an inevitable background figure who looms unseen, and it basically determines everything because it's his culinary needs. It's the fear of him being poisoned by the Allies that, of course, creates the premise for your play. And yet, by being invisible, he almost looms extra large as an absent presence, so to speak. So I think that's something that certainly I want to see when it's performed live. But it also brings up a second question I thought I would ask you, which has to do, I guess, with aesthetic decisions and also ethical decisions in putting the play together. I mean, I don't know what percentage, and I wouldn't want to pin you down here on numbers per se, but if you had to say what percentage of the play was framed as a comedy, or to what extent there are comic elements, whether they're comic relief, whether it's black comedy, however you want to phrase it. I mean, clearly, one of the things that's been remarked upon by reviewers of all kinds of films about the Nazis over many decades is that there are, straight ways of playing the Nazis, which is to say through the docudrama approach. And then there's, irreverent ways of portraying the Nazis, and that brings comedy into the mix. And so I don't know if you have some thoughts about comedy versus drama, or whether we even need to get into these black-white distinctions between dramatic, tropes and so forth. But to what extent do you find that that any comic relief or comic elements are part of this production?
Yeah. So we've always kind of positioned it, because you have to sort of put things in categories in order to get people to pay attention to them and know how to put them on the stage and how to present them. So it's always been sort of identified as a dark comedy, which I think is fair. Some people take the comedy out of, take the comedy of it with them. Some people take the more dramatic stuff, lean more toward that. I didn't set out to write a dark comedy. I just wanted to tell what I thought was a human story. There were no yucks with Hitler. I mean, that wasn't the intent. Actually, not long ago, the play went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which was a wonderful experience. And afterwards, I was fortunate to go to, back in the days when we could go out into the world, there was a Stanley Kubrick exhibit in London that I was fortunate to go see. And there was, some of his quotes were placed around the exhibit. And one of them was, I have it up in my office as a reminder. He was talking about Dr. Strangelove. And he said, most of the humor in Dr. Strangelove arises from the depiction of everyday human behavior in a nightmarish situation. And I thought, he's certainly just, I wish I had that before when I was doing interviews in Edinburgh, because I thought that was sort of a wonderful, concise way of putting it. I mean, when you put humans into a really pressurized, terrible situation, they're human, and there's going to be some comedic elements that come out of that. And also they're young women, they're trying to kill time. It's also what's so funny and so horrible is seeing it through youth, right? Seeing it through that innocence, the things that they're parroting, the things that they're repeating, the things that they've absorbed seem so ridiculous when we hear them through the mouths of babes, right? It's sometimes you can't quite hear it when it's adults, but when children are saying it, young people are saying it, you realize just how absurd it is. So, and also there's just, this is heavy stuff. And again, it wasn't super deliberate, but probably for my own relief as I was reading it, I would find things to make me laugh to just manage the material.
Sure. And I think what shines through also in terms of the scenes and the dialogue, certainly in other parts of the script that I recently read, is the question of the fate of the Jews. And obviously where you do broach that extremely sensitive topic, and you do it, of course, absent any comic elements, it's done with great subtlety, I think. And it's quite heavy, whether it's the Red Code, whether it's the disappearance of Anna's friend's family, and so forth. You wouldn't probably call this a Holocaust play as such, but how would you say the play does comment on the Nazi genocide of the Jews?
I don't know. I mean, I guess just the aspect of that. I mean, I guess part of me is wondering what there is to say in some ways that haven't been said, but to do it through this lens, it's like there were people that reported on neighbors and things, that reported on each other for convenience sake. These girls aren't in the play, they're not even safe with each other. And I don't know, it was just everyday, it's everyday people that made this happen. I'm not saying anything radical right here, but right, it wasn't Hitler that made everything happen. It was all the people that listened to him.
Yeah, and I was just going to interject maybe that one of the things I think that's interesting is that the portrayal of the Holocaust is done obliquely because it's through our articles of clothing or memories of disappeared people, and it's all filtered through from the perspective of the collaborators. I mean, you wouldn't call these girls perpetrators, although maybe some of their parents are perpetrators, Hilda's father perhaps, but you see the Holocaust experience refracted through their second, third-hand commentary. And what I almost wondered if you would, I mean, this is a thought that I had when we were conversing earlier, but I perhaps wanted to bring it up again, is that in some way there might be a parallel, a mirror image of what the girls are going through in their own, stuck position between boredom and terror, and what Jewish concentration camp survivors experience in many cases. And let me just be clear about this. I'm not for a second equating the two whatsoever. However, when you read the Nobel Prize winning Holocaust survivor Imer Kertész's book, Fatelessness, and he talks about his time in Auschwitz, one of the things that made that book so memorable and in fact controversial is that he himself said that the overwhelming feeling he took away from being in Auschwitz was boredom as a teenage boy who had ended up in Auschwitz after being deported from Budapest. And again, the circumstances are entirely different, but what would you be able to say perhaps about how these Aryan, Gentile, Nazi girls and their experience of being terrified at one moment and then whiling away the time bored off their gourds during the rest of the time, how that maybe does parallel something of the Jewish experience? And so even if this isn't a Holocaust play that portrays Jews, there's some echo there, some evocation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do think that it is a parallel experience, although not to the same extent. But there's the waiting around to find out if you're going to die. I mean, most of your day is taken up with waiting to find out if you're going to die, and so yes, as you said, so in some ways it's the experience of people in the camps is refracted through these girls. I mean, they they are having a parallel experience to a degree. You know, again, and no point in the picture is anybody safe. Is anybody really safe? And then, you know, the idea of boredom. I mean, I think that these girls are spending a lot of time trying to keep themselves busy, trying not to think about the fact that they're going to die. Right? They're doing what girls do when they're stuck together in a room and they're bored. As a matter of fact, there's even a scene where one of the girls says, like, I'm so bored. So they're dancing and they're talking about boys and they're talking about movie stars and they're braiding each other's hair. And obviously, I suspect that's not what was happening in the camps. There was a lot of work to be done and a lot of hiding and to not being seen. But in the end, you know, you have to take up time, and what does that look like in all of these circumstances when you're waiting?
And I think what it sheds light on is, again, one of the crazy realities of life in Nazi Germany, especially near the end, which is that the abnormal became normal and vice versa. So, you know, when the Soviet Red Army is just a couple of miles outside of Berlin in April of 1945, and they're strafing the bejesus out of the city, you still have soccer games. The professional German soccer leagues are still having games. Or for that matter, when we're living in terror during a global pandemic and we're, you know, locked down in our homes and we're bored and we're trying to figure out what to do with ourselves, you know, how do we go back and forth between those two perils of, you know, boring yourself to death or literally dying because of a plague or because of an air raid or because, you know, of a selection in a camp. So look, there's all kinds of themes here that are going on. I love the play. And what I was thinking is that we're probably done with our 15-minute block here, and I've been seeing questions coming through in the Q&A. So I'm assuming that if we turn things over to Suzanne, possibly to filter or curate the questions, then we can open it up for discussion.
Yes, and we're going to have the cast and the director join us as well. So if people have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we will get to as many as possible, and feel free to ask questions to anybody. First of all, thank you all very much for that wonderful performance. Let's start off with this. Somebody wanted to know what kind of research were you able to do? And did any of the girls end up actually dying for real?
So my research was pretty much based on reports. This woman, Margot Volk, who Margot, played by Henmei Sturgis, was named after. At 94, 95 years old, I think in 2013, she started telling the story that she had been one of Adolf Hitler's food tasters. And so there were a number of articles done about her and some interviews that she did. And so that was my jumping off point for this. And I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question?
If any of the food tasters did die.
So according to Margot, she claims to have been smuggled out on by a soldier who was who liked her on Goebbels' train, and she got out. She said the other women were all killed, mostly by the Russians, and then she claims to have endured. She was caught. She got out, but then she was caught by the Russians, and she was held hostage and assaulted for about 2 weeks before she was let go. And she went on to have a life and told the story at 94, 95 years old.
For the actors, what was it like playing these roles and becoming these girls? Who would like to start?
Yeah, well, I think I always like to say it was probably easier from it. Not that it was easy to play this character, but I think for my character, I represent the truth and sort of questioning what's going on and how there's all this propaganda going on, and I want to believe it, but I don't quite understand it, and I'm trying to find my own voice. And so that was kind of trying to find that fine line. So I mean, and I fundamentally believe that this behavior is wrong as a person. So as an actor, that wasn't a far fetch for me to connect to, but having to bring in believing all this other stuff around me, you know, we did a lot in the preparation for the first show. Collectively, we found posters, propaganda. I read a lot of journals of people that were living during this time, young women that were living this time, German women, you know, just trying to get as much of like a point of view as possible, so that I could understand this kind of mindset of living during a war and all of this, because I don't have that experience. And so I was just, for me, it was important to make these people as human as possible. And that's one of the things I did.
Yeah, I agree with KP. I think what's hard when people ask this question is they're focusing on obviously us playing Nazis, which of course they would. And I don't know that any of us sort of entered from that perspective, if you will. I think we all started with the basis of connecting with them as women, connecting with them as young women, and sort of like, they're very patriotic. As Americans, we are very patriotic. You know, we are taught very certain things in school. Like all of us had this collective, like, why didn't we learn anything like this in school? Like we're given a very quick overview of the Holocaust and World War II, and the Americans came in and we were great and we won and it was over. Like that was kind of our training. And so we you know, we can relate that to these women who are like, these people are bad and these things are bad and this is what we believe and we are the best. So I think we all kind of found our way to enter from shared truths, and it was less about not understanding the Nazi factor, although all of us, I think, really struggled with that, particularly in the first production. Just how do we truthfully be on stage and say these things and believe and make people believe that we believe them? And I think that something that's been such a great privilege for this group is that we have been with this play since the fall of 2018. And I think that first production was fantastic, but it's been really such a beautiful privilege to continue with this show and learn so much and learn the nuance and really go, oh my gosh, no, this is this. And so I think that's what I want to say as far as like my process and what I've learned throughout all of this and how I've engaged it as an actor.
Hannah Mae or Mary Catherine, do either one of you would like to answer that as well?
Sure, yes. I agree. Yes, at the very beginning, I know we did a lot of collective table work, which I always enjoy researching and learning about life during that time. But then after we collectively did that and saw the bigger spectrum, we zoomed in. And how I like to work as an actor is I just focused on who Margot is from the written page. So I defer to Michelle Kholos Brooks' writing, and I find all of her hints, her secrets, her flaunts, her fears, and I approach that from a human standpoint, from finding out what makes this girl afraid, what makes this girl confident, what makes this girl want to have so much fun. And these are all human things that I know we can all relate to. So so after we got the grand spectrum of, okay, yeah, generally Nazis and bad, and this is what we're doing, it's okay. But on this page, in this scene, I really want to make a good impression to my new girlfriends. Hopefully I can make friends and hopefully they'll accept me. And I think I'm prepared, but I'm nervous and I wore my best outfit. Like that's the basic, you know?
I think all of them have answered it beautifully.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because Mary Catherine, you had, in some ways, you had a really challenging situation because you're such a lovely person, but as Hilda, Hilda is, you know, she's a tough cookie, and very by the book and hanging on for dear life to the dogma, because if those puppet strings get cut, she
Has nothing. Yeah.
she has nothing. And so I think that was a really challenging role, to have to find the mean girl in you.
It's there. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think the biggest thing, it's like with any, I don't know why, but I play the bully a lot of times when I'm cast in plays and films and things. And something that I learned early on, and even just going through surviving high school, was that usually the bully or the mean girl, quote unquote, is just scared of so many different things. And I think that was the biggest thing that I focused on with Hilda, was what she was scared of. And Michelle wrote such an amazing character, an amazing arc throughout the whole play, that it was very easy to go on that journey every time we performed it, of the fear being exposed, with everything that happens.
Thank
And
you.
that crumbling, the falling apart, for sure.
Thank you. Someone writes, as a Holocaust educator, I'm struck by the absolute brainwashing done during those years to young people. The question becomes, were these young girls victims also?
I don't know.
You want me to jump in? You want me to jump in real quick?
I think I would love to have you jump in right now, because I think you've also talked a lot about Jojo Rabbit and other and art that's dealt with children in these circumstances. And
right. So, I think one interesting question to point out is that really since the turn of the millennium, for the last 20 or so years, the Germans themselves have been having a very extended debate about how they should remember the Nazi years, 1933 to 45. On the one hand, of course, they've long been associated with having unleashed this war in Europe that killed 35 million people, 55 plus million people worldwide, if you include the Pacific Theater. And for that obvious reason, there's been tremendous guilt and a desire for atonement among many Germans, not all for sure, in the last, 3/4 of a century. But since the turn of the millennium, Germans have increasingly also come to realize that many of them were victimized, either by the Red Army. At the end of the war, 1.5 million German women are raped. You've got about 12 million Germans expelled from their homes in Poland and Czechoslovakia and elsewhere, and turned into refugees. And how do you weigh those two things together historically? The fact that your country was the perpetrator country, and yet many of your own people were victimized at the end of the conflict. Needless to say, as human beings, it's always easier to remember trauma from the perspective of a victim than as the perpetrator, because psychologically we can keep our self-esteem intact. And so there's been some concern over the last 20 years when films have come out of Germany, plays have come out of Germany, novels have come out of Germany, where the role that they're portrayed in is in fact the victim. You can even think of the film Gantz and Hitler ranting and raving the last 10 days of the bunker before he commits suicide. And all you see throughout the entire film is Berlin being absolutely laid waste, Germans dying in droves. And one of the criticisms of German journalists of that film was, by only showing the last 10 days of Nazi Germany, when the Germans are suffering, you're forgetting, the 12 years that brought them to that point in the first place. So look, I'm not saying there's an easy answer to any of this, but the idea or the question of how do you balance perpetration and victimization, it's an ongoing struggle. And I appreciate the audience member's question. How do we approach this? And the last point I'll simply make is that Margot Wilk herself, who at age 95, divulged this whole story, the historicity of which is under debate among German observers. She, like Traudl Junger, who was Hitler's private secretary, who also confessed to all her experiences in her 90s. When you're about to go to your grave and you have secrets and you have guilt and you want to try and figure out how to portray that, you're going to try and put yourself forward in the best possible light, in all likelihood. So whether the story that she herself personally experienced and the other girls personally experienced, whether it was as she portrays or whether it was not, or whether we're invariably getting these stories filtered through people's psychology, it's really hard to say. But I don't think there's any doubt that we can't simply whitewash people or as the phrase would be, blackwash them with total 100% categories of total victimization, total perpetration. There's a lot of gray area, and I think great plays like this one do help to explore those interstices, if you will, those marginal areas.
Thank you. And another question kind of on that vein is, do you think the play, by being anachronistic, shows what is happening today when people get brainwashed today in white supremacy?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think there are definitely parallels. I mean, one of the things that we're struggling with as a culture right now is the infiltration of QAnon, right? And it's not something that I'm very studied in, but my understanding is that it's ripping families apart, and that we saw a lot of evidence of it at the Capitol. And I think it could fairly be called brainwashing. And so I think people that know how to use those tools will always use those tools. I think historically, you know, Gav, this is very effective, right?
Well, and especially when you live in a society that suppresses dissent. I mean, one of the first things the Nazis did in the first couple of months of Hitler's chancellorship was to, subject the free press to total state control. And however much we know in America today, we're living in different media bubbles, there is still the option to avail yourself of switching the channel and looking at MSNBC if you watch Fox, or vice versa. And, God knows that preserving basic liberal democratic freedoms are absolutely critical to preventing, a turn of any country towards, the totalitarian dark side. Because once the state does in fact have the ability to completely curate the message that people get, then, access to real facts, real truth is incredibly difficult to get.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a few questions together. How were the tasters chosen? Who actually cooked the food? And what were the conditions like that the girls had to live in?
So Margot, the Margot Volk claims that she basically there was sort of a knock on the door, and that she was chosen because she was kind of in the area, and she was a youngish woman and sort of fit the bill. I don't know about the other women. In the play, the girls talk about, we constructed ways for them to be chosen. And Hilda was chosen because she was from a very prominent family. It was an honor. And everybody, Liesel was chosen because, because a girl who hadn't quite been a friend, who had been kind of a competitor in school, told the authorities about Liesel, because it was an honor, so that Liesel would have this honor. So they all had, there was all different reasons, but we had to construct those. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
The food was, there were official cooks, as far as I understand.
Yeah, I was actually just going to add one of the interesting things that I thought of when there's the line early in the play, I forget which of the characters utters it, but somebody says, "You look like Marlena," which is, I don't remember, is it, can one of you raise your hands who says that line, just for my own? Okay, so Liesel, it's all you. So obviously it's a reference to Marlene Dietrich at the time, but it turns out Hitler's private cook herself was named Marlena. So when your character, Liesel, says, "Oh, you look just like Marlena," it's in fact entirely likely that she was having meals with the characters. It was Helena Maria von Exner, who was Hitler's first cook. And it turns out she was actually fired because she had falsified her ancestral family tree, and she had a Jewish grandmother and a Jewish great-grandmother, and then they replaced her with somebody else, whose name, if I guess, Constanza Manziarli, who may well have committed suicide with Hitler in the bunker after she was replaced Marlena in 1944. So, when you go through these parts of the play in the future, I hope I don't confuse anyone by throwing in that other meaning for Marlena, but I found that was interesting.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this one to Sarah. What was it like taking the play to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
Well, it was a great adventure. I think if it's not apparent, this team of women are incredible, not only to work with, but just to be around. I've had the pleasure of working with Michelle on this play for many years now. We did a production in New Jersey before we brought it to New York. So Michelle is fantastic, and you should know Michelle and follow Michelle. And then these 4 women came on board, and they're a hoot, and they're so much fun. And yeah, it was one of the greatest privileges of my artistic career to figure out this play in its Edinburgh form with them, because we had to cut a lot of the play, and that was really challenging to do. It was recommended the play should run an hour. Our play ran 90 minutes. So perhaps 30 minutes doesn't sound like a big deal, but in the world of theater and storytelling, 5 minutes is a lot. So 30 minutes is brutal. But everybody worked really hard, and I just want to, I can't remember if it was said, but we were sold out the entire time. And yeah, it was a lovely adventure. And I guess that's what I'll say about Edinburgh. And we had a great team of designers as well that I'd like to, it was an all-female team, and all of the designers for the production were a part of really creating this production that we've all grown to love and care about.
I wanted to say that if anybody wants to see, there was Hallie, on top of being an incredibly talented actor, is also wonderful at she did some fantastic videos from Edinburgh. And if anybody wants to see all the shenanigans in Edinburgh, there's some great videos on the Hitler's Tasters, the play website, if anybody would like to see more.
Michelle, I'm curious, was the play, what's the reaction from folks that aren't in the United States? We're used to talking about it, and a lot of these plays are for an American audience. Was it different having an audience from Edinburgh?
It was a little bit different, yeah, because it was a very international audience. You know, I think there were 4,000 plays while we were there, and people were hopping from, you know, play to play to play. That's why you have to schedule only an hour, because as soon as yours is over, or even if yours isn't over, if they've got another one scheduled, they're going. And it was really interesting to hear where some of the laughs came with a more European audience. I think the history is a little closer to a lot of them. And so some of the references were received, the timing of the references were received a little bit differently. I feel like in the US, there have been, just in my people I've encountered personally, a lot of people, even after the play, would come to me and sort of ask for permission, say like, was it okay that I laughed? Or, you know, was it okay that I was upset when I saw the swastikas? And I didn't find that sort of needing permission in the same way from the European audience.
Interesting. Thank you. We're going to wrap this up. I've got 2 last questions for you. The first is, several people want to know, what do you hope people take away from seeing this play, particularly young people?
You know, I guess in the deepest recesses of my very hippie heart, because I don't like to be a playwright that tries to teach you things, but what I do hope is that if people are going to come away with anything, it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency, and that we can't afford to be complacent, and we can't afford to look away. Our children are at stake.
Thank you. And so finally, what's next for the play?
Well, as you all know, we're in a pandemic. Theater is, I know. So as Suzanne said in the beginning, you know, we opened in Los Angeles. This whole crew came out from New York to Los Angeles to open this play, and we had to close the day after we opened. So there has been, well, there's been a lot of interest in the play. So we're hoping that once all this blows over, you know, it is my deepest wish to see this particular production of Hitler's Tasters go forward. I think it's an extraordinary production. I think Sarah has done such a gorgeous job of helping define this play and directing it. All these women have done so much beautiful work on this play, and I would love to see this crew get this play back to LA, to New York. This is my great wish for it. There are other things happening. There is a theater company in Zurich, the White Rabbit Theater Company, that has been trying to get the play going, and of course has run into these same pandemic problems, but they just announced, I think yesterday, that they're going to open it in April. So that's very exciting. And another really wonderful thing that has happened, I don't think the girls even know about this, but that I connected with this incredible guy, Fareed Haq, from Early Stage Studios in London, and they create these beautiful graphic novels, educational graphic novels. And we're right now working on turning Hitler's Tasters into a graphic novel, which is a really fun project. And it's a great jumping off point. You know, the graphic novels that they create are, like I said, they're educational, but they're also very entertaining. But there's an opportunity for them to go into educational environments and be used as conversations to open up further conversations about World War II and the Holocaust. So that's kind of an exciting thing that's happened. But I do really look forward to the day that we can see it on a stage again, and hopefully with all these incredible artists.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Michelle and Gav, for sharing this little known story with us today. And thank you, Sarah and Hallie and Hannah Mae, Mary Catherine and Caitlin Page for the presentation you gave us today. And thank you to the audience for joining us. As Michelle said, to learn more, to see various clips, you can visit the Hitler's Tasters website. We will send a follow-up email in a few days that will have a link to the recording of our program today, as well as a link to their website. So it should be easy to find. Just to remind everybody to please visit momentmag.com, where you can sign up for our anti-Semitism monitor. And don't forget to register for next week's Zoominar, The State of Democracy, with David Brooks and Robert Siegel. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.